All right, I know what you might be thinking. What an odd collection of topics this week. Digital signage? Perhaps that's something you hadn't even thought about as a topic in communication studies. But hey, somebody has to make those signs. Someone has to decide what goes in those signs, where to place them, what audience is going to receive what messages. That sounds like a career niche for a lot of people right now. Maybe not a full-time job, but if your company has digital signage, someone needs to be in charge of those signs, don't they? Or perhaps they outsource that to marketing or advertising companies, which have experts. Maybe you want to be one of those experts. Another common reaction from students is, oh my goodness, this professor is making me watch a movie from the silent era. How cruel and unusual this professor must be. It's a great movie. It's listed often as one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time. And since we're studying a lot of technology, it's kind of fun to take a look back at how people viewed technology in the 1920s, threats and promises of technology, perhaps compare it to a movie today. It's also interesting to see how a technology movie used technologies of the time compared to how we use technologies today in our cinematic feature-length films, as well as our more humble independent films, and as well as perhaps our own creations of home videos. Lots of technologies emerging now. Well, lots of technologies were emerging back in the 1920s too. Does the message of the movie transcend the technologies available to deliver it? These are fascinating questions. I'm not an old film buff, but I do know people who really love cinematic technologies and history and love to discuss those things. It seems to be once you get into that kind of mindset, you start to discover lots of old movies you want to see, lots of comparisons you want to make. It may not be your thing, but we're going to tippy toe into it a little bit. We're going to tippy toe into it with a powerful movie. Um, Ethics comes back for another look here. Utilitarianism is the most common ethical school of thought for most of my students. I think it resonates well with American culture. We tend to think of ourselves as practical people. We don't like to waste a lot of time with convoluted theories that are too complex for the realities that we live in. Well, we invent our own theories, and utilitarianism is one of them. It doesn't do justice to the entire field of ethics, but it's often a starting point for many of my students, especially many of my American students, as they examine ethical issues in technology. Since we're dealing with a powerful film, it might be interesting for some of you to delve into utilitarianism as a perspective to bring to bear on that film. Or digital signage. You may not even thought of it as an ethical issue yet. It should be. Some of my students who've traveled to France oftentimes are stunned by nudity in the signage, in the advertising programs and campaigns of companies there. Something that just wouldn't fly very well. Although some of you perhaps are stunned by Calvin Klein's advertising campaigns here in the United States as they tippy-toe up to the edge of what is considered culturally acceptable. Lots of ethical questions available to you, not just with sex and marketing, but also with audience niches and how we place things, and are we stereotyping when we place those kinds of campaigns in various locations for various audiences. Oh my, many, many ethical perspectives. Are you fired up? I am. Go get them.